I, Christopher Ratholumbus, will be the first one to find the new world.
You got beat by a Popo.
Popo won.
Popo Island.
Shut up, you stupid birds.
With all of the Iceborne news hitting the community recently, the hype seems absolutely endless, and with good reason. But imagine if the only news we got was the return of, say, Velocidrome. But there is no precedent for Velocidrome to show up, nothing significant at least, so what are the 5 monsters that could believably come to Iceborne that I do not want to see at all? Raptors, off limits. They're too obvious. Subspecies and deviants, also gone. Because obviously no one wants to see anything similar to what we already have. So, what exactly is?
Number 5.
Show me your genitals. Your genitals.
What?
Show me your genitals.
Genitalia!
The genital monster himself, Khezu, is one of the easiest potential monsters to explain why he could come to the game. He enjoys cold caves, and with an ice map as big as the one we are getting, some cavey areas do seem quite likely. In theory, I would like to see how they would revamp Khezu in World, as his moveset has a lot of potential to be quite pretty. In comparison to old games, the environment in Iceborne would probably be a bit better to support his creepiness, actually making it feel like a scene from some sort of horror movie. And World's graphical fidelity has a high chance of making Khezu look properly creepy himself as well, rather than just sort of looking like a with.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
However, my main issue with Khezu is I don't think any level of changing him could make me able to take him seriously. Having experienced old Khezu at any point in my life, any form of new Khezu would still just be a weird penis monster to me. Sort of like if your friend got pantsed in front of you in the 2nd grade. They could become a millionaire, but when you look at them, all you'd see is that moment. Pull up your pants, Khezu. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you could escape that time in your life, but to me, I don't know if you could ever be anything but a dick.
Number 4.
Yoink. Yoink. Yoink.
Yoink!
This floppy birdie boy Gypceros can suck all of the Khezus in the old world himself. Gypceros has the potential to be cute in the right setting, I suppose. Created to look derpy and sort of make people look at him and feel a sort of pity. As an idea, that's perfectly fine, and honestly, it's been done perfectly with a couple of monsters in World who I refuse to call out on the matter by name, only for their own safety. However, the moment you start fighting Gypceros, you realize he could never really be cute because of his fight. Because all he does is stun you and randomly fire poison at you and flap his face around as he runs at you and then steal your motherfucking items. The concept of Gypceros being what it is and then the actual fight experience not quite matching what it could be makes him a prime candidate for translation into Monster Hunter World's mechanics, as it's just so beautiful at showing off the personality of things through their fights, which Gypceros honestly hasn't had properly. However, regardless of how well you do it, I refuse to let anyone put anything in Iceborne that steals your items, because if there is one thing I could not handle, it is losing my hard-earned pitfall traps. Shock traps? Those are one thing, but pitfall traps? Who pissed in your cereal this morning, Gypceros? The answer is me, after working out the secret to time travel.
This is the darkest, most terrible timeline.
Titsy's execution in World proves that the flash mechanic can work beautifully in this game. However, instituting another flashing bird wyvern in general seems a little pushy towards Titsy's turf. Don't get me wrong, if instituted correctly in Iceborne, Gypceros would be 100% better than he ever was in the old world. But I don't think there is any change short of a full rework that could make me enjoy fighting Gypceros as a whole.
Number 3.
Chicken of the sea. Low fat, preservative free.
What's the best tuna? Chicken of the sea.
If you want to enjoy a Monster Hunter game, one of the requirements, honestly, should be a lack of Plesioth. Or at the very least, a lack of any quest that forces you to fight Plesioth. Just make him an annoying optional monster so I can choose to never see him again in my entire life. When it comes to the likelihood of Plesioth, we already have 2 Piscine Wyverns. Bringing in the 3rd would probably be mechanically quite simple. So what's wrong with bringing him in, right? Well, PTSD mainly. The hips of Plesioth are the things that legends are made of. At one point in time, able to take out a hunter from miles away, but how do you fix this? Well, my main issue here is there are 2 options. Either you lean full into the meme, make him have a crazy hitbox, and still nobody will enjoy fighting him. They'll bitch about him, and a lot of people complain about him. And then why even bring him in the first place? Well, because the other option is to fix him, which sort of makes him just a fish, a regular fish. a regular fish with legs who fights more like a Gypceros with a beam upgrade than like any other sort of fish. The fact of the matter is, in comparison to Plesioth, you could argue that Gypceros is actually interesting as a creature. My personal distaste for Plesioth aside, as a monster concept, he is just boring, and I don't think I could find any way to justify adding him over many other creatures. But hey, at least he does more than just charge, unlike...
Number 2.
Oh no, a Lagambi!
The beast from the east, the king of swing, the horned devil of the strong bevel,
Bulldrome. This monster teeters on the edge of so not being a monster that it is almost not worth including Bulldrome, except for the fact that we had the New Year's event quest with a giant moss swine whose attack patterns felt oddly similar, by which I mean exactly like a Bulldrome's. Even the turns on the charges just felt like the creature in front of me should be a little bit smaller, covered in fur, and preceded by some gnarly tusks. As for why I don't want to see Bulldrome, there are a good number of reasons, not the least of which being Bulldrome's moveset, which is just 100% charges. Sometimes it'll only charge once. Sometimes it'll charge twice in a row. It's a super exciting fight that is different every single time. But seriously, I understand that subtracting Bulldrome from the game doesn't mean we get something like Nursilla. The effort required to bring them to the game and the specific slot they fill are ridiculously different from one another. The main reason I don't want Bulldrome, however, is a sort of general distaste for these tiny beginning monsters that I've developed from playing World's Endgame. By the time you got past HR 50 and World, the only monsters that mattered, the ones that were 100% worth fighting, were tempered Elder Dragons, of which there were 5 at launch. Not very many to choose from, was it? Even if you expanded a little bit and did some tier 2 tempereds, at least you got a few more. But so many tier 1 monsters with fantastic personalities just weren't deemed hard enough to be worth decent rewards. Hell, even make their tempered quests have higher damage multipliers than the other monsters, or something. Just make them worth fighting. It's not worth bringing a monster in and just kicking it to the curb. Monsters like Anjanath and Tobikadachi are fantastic creatures that we never see just because they were arbitrarily labeled tier 1. I don't want that sad fate for any more monsters come Iceborne. I want every monster to be worth hunting for one reason or another. Give us good reasons to see the monsters you make for us. Bulldrome, however, probably wouldn't give me any enjoyment from fighting it, even if killing it gave you a guaranteed attack jewel. Don't get me wrong, I would definitely still do it, I just wouldn't like it.
Number 1.
Ready?
When it comes to high-flying invaders with sharp claws, crazy scale projectiles, and a face that is reminiscent of a pine cone, there are few faces that come to mind more than Seregios, actually. The easiest way to make the game world feel more populated in terms of number of monsters is to have more invader monsters. That way, even fighting a Rathalos in the Ancient Forest could feel new if a Seregios, for example, showed up. Why do I say Seregios, though? Well, in order to add an invader to Iceborne that is capable of going back to the base map, it would either need to be capable of flying or swimming. And if you'd have asked me which one from that category I'd like, without thinking about it, I would have said Seregios. However, after thinking it through quite a bit, Seregios not only shares the same flying wyvern body shape of 90% of Monster Hunter monsters and 90% of the monsters in World, but he also takes away from 2 monsters that are already in the base game of World. Not even tier 1s, but tier 2s, Odogaron and Basilgeuse, with his main gimmick being a super fast and agile creature that causes bleed with hit and run tactics. Odogaron essentially just becomes non-flying Seregios in comparison, which for a monster so badass as Odogaron would be such a depressing fate. As far as Basilgeuse goes, I feel like I said everything I needed to at the beginning of this. Both flying invaders with projectile scales slightly different in function, but the fact that you can call both of these pretty boys a pinecone head makes it awkward to bring him in from an aesthetic standpoint. But then, on top of that, his personality is super close to that of a monster like Basil. Monster Hunter World's best feature, from my point of view, is just how deep into a monster's personality you can look just by following them around for a bit and fighting them, and I'd love to see the personality of plenty of old monsters shown in the New World style. But with Seregios, I feel like we wouldn't get anything particularly new, at least in comparison to some super unique old monsters like Kurapeko. I really want Kurapeko. Honestly, there's a ton of monsters that I really want, and that's why this list is important. Because as much as there's tons of monsters that every single one of us would want, there's so many monsters that would get in the way of that, because they're just not worth bringing. Imagine having Najarala in World. How much better would that fight be? Don't get me the wrong, the original fight's really good, but how much better could it be? It would be amazing. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I've been Cotton Dinosaur, and these have been my top 5 monsters not to come to Iceborne. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the little notification bell for more, comment and tell me what monsters you don't want to see in Iceborne, and until next time, ladies and gentlemen, stay sweet.